The smell of burnt toast had barely faded when Keisha, a tired black waitress, heard the scream. She was wiping a counter in the corner booth of Riverside Diner when smoke rolled through the open door like a ghost no one invited. Across the street, an old brick apartment was burning, orange light flashing the reflection of her coffee pot. People ran out, shouting. Then she saw it. A small white girl, maybe 7, Emma, pressed against a window on the 3rd floor, tiny palms slapping the glass, her face a blur of terror. Keisha's heart froze, then kicked hard. Everyone outside was yelling, but no one moved. Her manager, Pete, grabbed her arm. "Stay put, girl. Fire department's coming." She shook him off. She doesn't have minutes. Before anyone could stop her, Keisha bolted across the street, apron still tied, shoes slipping on wet pavement. The heat hit her like a wall, burning her lungs, but the only sound she heard was a child's muffled cry. A man, probably the girl's father, dressed in a suit and gold watch, was on his knees, screaming, "My baby! Somebody help my baby!" But nobody climbed. Nobody moved. Keisha's hands found a cold railing of the emergency ladder. It shook under her weight, but she didn't stop. Each rung seared her palms as she pulled herself higher through the smoke. Her knees slammed into metal, blood mixed with ash, but she kept climbing. "Lady, you're gonna die up there," someone shouted. Maybe, but some people die standing still. Flames burst through a nearby window. She turned her face away and pressed forward, arm over arm, step by step. Her apron caught a spark. She tore it off midair, breath breaking, lungs aching. Through the haze, she saw Emma's small eyes, pleading, desperate, pure. Keisha reached the ledge, swung her leg, and punched the glass with her elbow until it shattered. Shards tore her skin. The little girl screamed, "Come here, baby." Keisha shouted, voice hoarse, "I got you." She wrapped Emma in her arms, turned her back to flames, and climbed down slow, step by step, like she was carrying the world. Below, sirens wailed, cameras lifted, and for the first time, people started to cheer, but she didn't hear any of it. She only heard the heartbeat of the child pressed to her chest. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening, and the world needs to hear them. Keisha's hands trembled as her feet hit the last rung of the ladder. The crowd parted around her like a wave, voices colliding, cheers, gasps, prayers. She didn't notice any of it. Her arm still cradled Emma, the little white girl coughing against her chest, her small fingers clutching Keisha's burned sleeve. "Get her oxygen," someone yelled. Keisha's knees buckled, and a paramedic caught her by the elbow, guiding her to the curb. The man in the suit, Emma's father, rushed forward, face streaked with tears and soot. He looked powerful a minute ago. Now he was just another man watching his world burn. He knelt in front of them, voice shaking. "She's alive? Oh, God, she's alive." Emma coughed once, then whispered faintly, "Daddy." Her voice was small but whole, and that single word broke him. The paramedic pulled the girl from Keisha's arms carefully, wrapping her in a silver blanket. Keisha tried to stand, but her leg gave out. She fell hard onto the pavement, breath caught halfway. Blood trickled from her forearm where the glass had sliced deep. Her apron was gone, her hair matted with soot. Her lungs felt heavy, like she had swallowed smoke instead of air. The man looked up at her, eyes wild. You went in there?" Keisha nodded once, too tired to answer. Firefighters swarmed past, shouting, spraying water through shattered windows. The building hissed like an angry beast. Pete, her manager, stood near the diner doorway, hands on his head. "Lord have mercy, girl, you done lost your mind." She didn't respond. Her mind wasn't here. It was somewhere between flame and fear, replaying the image of that tiny hand banging on the glass. A firefighter jogged toward them. "We got all civilians out. No fatalities reported." Cheers erupted. Keisha exhaled for the first time in minutes, her body trembling from adrenaline and pain. She looked at Emma's father again. He was on his knees, hugging the child tightly, whispering into her hair. People were filming, murmuring. That waitress saved her life. She climbed the building herself. Is she okay? Phones lit the night like candles. Keisha turned away, trying to hide her face from the cameras. The paramedic pressed gauze against her arm. You need to go with us. Miss, that smoke damage isn't small. She shook her head weakly. I can't afford no ambulance. Ma'am, it's not optional, he said firmly. She looked at him once, then at the flashing lights, and finally at the girl smiling faintly in her father's arms. For the first time all night, she allowed herself to close her eyes. The sirens faded into a hum as the stretcher wheels clicked over the pavement. Someone shouted, "Get that on video, she's a hero." But Keisha didn't hear them anymore. She drifted into darkness, her last thought a whisper. At least she's safe. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep of a heart monitor pulled Keisha back from the dark. Her eyes fluttered open to blinding white lights. A hospital ceiling. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Every inhale scraped her throat raw. Each exhale burned like smoke still lived inside her. When she tried to sit up, a sharp pain shot through her ribs. A nurse hurried over, gently pressing her shoulder down. Easy, honey. You're okay now. You're at Grady Memorial. Keisha blinked, trying to find her words. The little girl, Emma, she made it. The nurse smiled softly. She's safe. She's with her father. They can't stop talking about you. Keisha exhaled, a shaky laugh catching in her throat. Good, she whispered, her eyes closing again. That's all that matters. Don't go to sleep just yet, the nurse said kindly. You've got some visitors. Before Keisha could ask who, the door swung open. Flashbulbs burst like lightning. Reporters crowded the doorway, microphones, phones, cameras. Miss Keisha, how does it feel to be called the Angel of Atlanta? Do you consider yourself a hero? She flinched at the word hero. Her heart raced. It felt too much like being on fire again, too bright, too loud, too many eyes. The nurse blocked them. She needs rest. But before they could argue, another voice cut through the chaos. Deep, calm, and commanding. That's enough. The crowd fell silent. A tall white man stepped in, wearing a gray hoodie instead of a suit. His face was bruised by smoke, his eyes red from crying. It was Logan Bennett, Emma's father, the billionaire everyone recognized from business magazines. Now he just looked like a man stripped bare. He waited for the cameras to lower, then walked to Keisha's bedside. For a long second, he said nothing. He just stared at her bandaged hands. Then his voice cracked. You saved my daughter. Keisha tried to smile, but couldn't find the strength. Anyone would have done it. Logan shook his head slowly. No, they didn't. They stood there. He swallowed hard. You went in when no one else did. I'll never forget that. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. His words felt heavier than gratitude, like something being rewritten between them. He placed an envelope on the bedside table. For your medical bills, he murmured. She frowned. You don't owe me anything. He met her eyes, voice firm. You're right. I owe you everything. The room went quiet again. Keisha looked down at her burned hands, unsure what to say. Outside, the world buzzed. Hashtags spreading. News anchors calling her the fearless black waitress who climbed through fire. But inside, all she felt was exhaustion and disbelief. A nurse peeked in. The video's gone viral, she said softly. Millions of views in hours. Keisha exhaled slowly. Guess the world finally noticed me, after smoke and scars. Logan nodded, eyes heavy. Sometimes it takes a fire to remind people what humanity looks like. Keisha turned her face toward the window. Dawn was rising, soft gold filtering through the blinds. For the first time in years, she felt the warmth wasn't burning her. It was waking her up. If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe. 2 days later, Keisha sat upright in her hospital bed, a little stronger, her hands wrapped in clean white gauze. The TV in the corner replayed the viral footage on loop, her silhouette against the burning building, clutching the little girl, flames chasing her down the ladder. The caption read, Black Waitress becomes real-life hero. She exhaled, uneasy. The word hero still felt foreign. Before she could switch the channel, a knock echoed on the door. Logan Bennett stepped in. The billionaire she'd saved, this time wearing jeans and a simple shirt, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I figured you could use the real stuff instead of hospital water," he said. Keisha managed a tired smile. "Thanks. I didn't expect you back." He sat beside her bed. "You didn't just save Emma's life, Keisha. You saved mine." She looked away. Compliments never sat right with her. They slipped off her skin like rain on glass. "You don't owe me that kind of talk," she muttered. Logan shook his head. "This isn't talk. It's truth." Before she could reply, the door burst open again. Her diner manager, Pete, stormed in red-faced, shirt half untucked. "There you are," he barked. "You just walk off mid-shift? The whole diner's chaos because of you." Keisha blinked, stunned. "Pete, I almost died." "Yeah, and now you're all over the news. You think this makes you special? You embarrass my business." Logan's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" Pete turned toward him, not recognizing who he was. "Who are you, buddy? Some reporter?" Logan stood, slow and controlled. "I'm the father of the little girl she saved." Pete froze, his face drained of color. "Oh, Mr. Bennett. Sir, I didn't mean..." Logan stepped closer, voice calm but sharp as glass. "You pulled her back that night, didn't you? You told her to let my daughter burn." Pete stammered. I was protecting my business." "Your business?" Logan cut in, while she was protecting a life. Silence filled the room. Even the beeping monitor seemed to hold its breath. Logan reached into his pocket, pulled out a check, and set it on the small table. "This will cover every unpaid hour she ever gave your diner. You can consider her employment terminated." Pete swallowed hard, words tangled in his throat. Keisha just stared, unable to process what was happening. "Leave," Logan said flatly. "Now." Pete backed out of the room, eyes glued to the floor, mumbling something that sounded like an apology. The door clicked shut behind him. Keisha let out a long, shaky breath. "You didn't have to do that." Logan turned back to her. "Yes, I did." He lowered himself into the chair again. Men like that get used to talking down to people who can't fight back. But today, he learned he was standing in the wrong room. Keisha's throat tightened. "You're not used to defending waitresses, are you?" Logan gave a faint smile. "No, but I'm learning what real strength looks like." She looked at him for a long second, unsure whether to be grateful or guarded. "Don't mistake me for some fairy tale, Mr. Bennett," she said quietly. "I'm just someone who moved when nobody else did." Logan nodded. "Exactly. That's why people like you change the world." Keisha didn't answer. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the scars and exhaustion, a spark of pride flickered, small, steady, and finally hers. The next morning, sunlight spilled across Keisha's hospital blanket, soft and warm. Her hands still ached, but the bandages were cleaner now. The pain dull, manageable. She stared at the clock on the wall, wondering how many shifts she'd already missed, how many bills were waiting to swallow her whole once she stepped outside this clean white room. A quiet knock broke her thoughts. Logan Bennett stepped in again, holding a brown envelope instead of coffee this time. He looked calmer, but the weight in his eyes hadn't gone anywhere. "I know you don't like surprises," he said gently, "so I'll get straight to the point." He handed her the envelope. Inside were printed papers, an offer letter, letterhead stamped Bennett Foundation for Community Renewal. Keisha frowned. "What is this?" He sat beside her, elbows on his knees. "It's not charity, it's opportunity. I want you on my foundation team, not cleaning floors, not serving coffee. Leading." She blinked. "Leading what?" "Community outreach," he said. "We build housing and support programs for single mothers, homeless workers, people who deserve more than the system gives." Keisha laughed under her breath, a tired, disbelieving sound. "You want me, a waitress who can barely pay rent, to lead a foundation?" Logan nodded. "I want someone who knows what it means to survive. That kind of heart can't be bought or taught." Her voice cracked. You're offering this because I saved your daughter." He shook his head. "No, Keisha. I'm offering it because I saw who you are when no one was watching." She looked down at her hands, the same hands that carried plates, wiped tables, and clung to a burning ladder. They trembled slightly as she whispered, I don't know if I belong in places like that." He leaned forward, quiet and sincere. "You belong anywhere you've already earned your way into, and you earned this the moment you climbed that wall." Before she could respond, a soft knock came at the door. An older black woman entered, elegant gray braids, calm eyes, wearing a navy sweater. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said warmly. "Mr. Bennett asked me to stop by. Name's Dolores Green. I manage the Bennett household." Keisha nodded politely, uncertain. "Hi." Dolores smiled, setting down a small bag of homemade food. "He told me you're the woman who climbed fire for a stranger's child. I just came to make sure you're eating before you start saving the world again." Logan chuckled. "That's Dolores. Part housekeeper, part general. Part truth-teller, too," Dolores added, her tone gentle but firm. She looked at Keisha, studying her face. "Child, the world will call you a hero, then try to make you prove it every day. Don't fall for that." Keisha swallowed hard. "I'm just tired, ma'am. Feels like my life only matters when I'm burning." Dolores stepped closer, touching her shoulder lightly. "Then it's time you learn how to shine without the flames." The room went quiet, a kind of silence that felt like peace instead of emptiness. Logan stood, sliding the envelope toward her again. "You don't have to answer now. Just know the door's open. For once, it's yours to walk through." Keisha looked at the letter, her reflection in the glossy paper. Maybe it wasn't about charity or fame. Maybe it was about breathing without fear. She nodded slowly, her voice soft. "I'll think about it." Logan smiled. "That's all I ask." As he left, Dolores stayed a moment longer. She turned to Keisha, her voice low and wise. "Baby, courage don't always mean running into fire. Sometimes it's just saying yes when life finally offers you something better." Keisha stared at the envelope, heartbeat unsteady. For the first time in her life, the next step wasn't survival. It was possibility. The elevator doors opened to reveal a lobby of polished glass and quiet power. Keisha stepped out slowly, her palms sweating against the straps of her worn purse. 2 weeks had passed since the fire, and today was her first time walking into the Bennett Foundation, the building whose name gleamed in gold letters on the wall. She'd almost turned back twice on the way. The taxi driver had said, "You sure this is the right address, ma'am?" when she gave him the destination. Maybe she wasn't sure, but something in her chest whispered, "You climbed fire, you can walk into a building." Inside, men in tailored suits and women in sleek dresses moved with a kind of ease that comes from never worrying about rent. A receptionist smiled too wide. "Can I help you?" "Yes, I'm here to see Mr. Bennett," Keisha replied. The woman's polite expression faltered just slightly before she gestured toward the elevator. "Top floor, ma'am." Keisha rode up alone, watching her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her bandaged hand looked out of place against the polished metal. She whispered to herself, "Don't let them see you shake." When the doors opened, Logan Bennett stood waiting by a conference room with glass walls and too many eyes inside. He smiled, a real one, not the kind he gave cameras. "Keisha, you came." "I said I'd think about it," she said softly, stepping forward. "And I said I'd be ready when you did." He guided her inside. Around the table sat 9 people, executives, lawyers, board members, every one of them white. Their murmurs dimmed when she entered. Logan placed a folder in front of her. "Everyone, this is Keisha Turner, the woman who saved my daughter's life. She'll be leading our new community justice initiative." A woman in pearls tilted her head. "Leading? Does she have management experience?" Keisha felt the air tighten around her. Logan opened his mouth to respond, but Keisha raised a hand. "It's fine," she said calmly. "No, I don't have management experience, but I have life experience, the kind that doesn't fit on paper. I've been homeless, broke, overlooked, and called names you wouldn't dare repeat in this room." A ripple of discomfort moved across the table. She continued, steady, unshaken. I know what it feels like to fall through the cracks you all design policies for. So if you're asking what qualifies me, she met the woman's eyes, voice cutting through the silence. I've lived the life you're trying to fix. That's my degree. The room went dead quiet. Then Logan smiled faintly, proud. I told you, she's exactly what this place needs. When the meeting ended, Keisha walked to the wide window overlooking the city. Down below were streets she used to walk home after long shifts, head down, counting tips. Now she stood above them, not out of arrogance, but clarity. A gentle voice spoke behind her. You held your ground good, said a middle-aged black woman in a navy blazer. She extended a hand. Evelyn Rhodes, VP of Housing Grants. Keisha shook it, surprised by the strength in her grip. Evelyn smiled. Don't worry about the stairs. This place runs on talk. You just keep working till they have no choice but to listen. Keisha nodded. Feels like walking barefoot on glass. Evelyn chuckled. Then make sure they remember the sound. Later that day, Keisha stood alone in her small new office. Nothing fancy, just a desk, a window, and a clean start. On the wall above her computer, she pinned a child's crayon drawing. A stick figure woman with wild curls holding hands with a smiling girl under a rainbow of orange and red. The words scrawled beneath read, Miss Keisha saved me. She stared at it for a long moment, her throat tightening. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not applause, not headlines, just purpose. The world had watched her climb through smoke. Now it would watch her build something from the ashes. The foundation's building was nearly empty when Keisha packed her things that evening. Outside, the sky glowed with the soft orange of sunset, the same color as a fire that once almost took her life, now warm instead of cruel. She took a deep breath, standing by the window, letting the reflection of the city lights settle in her eyes. It had been a month since the rescue. In that time, she built something new, not just projects and plans, but people. Single mothers, ex-workers, young kids with no direction. They all came through her door. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't serving coffee to strangers. She was serving purpose. A gentle knock came from behind her. When she turned, Emma stood there, holding a bouquet of tiny white flowers. Her father, Logan Bennett, smiled faintly from the doorway. Somebody insisted on seeing you, he said. Keisha knelt as a little girl ran into her arms. Emma's small voice was shy but clear. Daddy said you're helping other people now. Keisha smiled, hugging her tight, trying to, baby, one at a time. Emma handed her a folded paper. Another drawing, this one newer, brighter. It showed the same two figures, but now the building behind them wasn't on fire. It was shining golden, with a sign that read Hope Center. Keisha blinked away a tear. You're getting better at this. Emma grinned. You are too. Logan stepped forward, his voice softer than usual. She wanted to thank you again, not for that night, but for everything since. Keisha shook her head. No need, Mr. Bennett. You gave me a chance. That's enough. He smiled. No, Keisha. You gave us a reason to believe again. They stood in the quiet office, the sunset painting them in gold and amber. Keisha looked out the window. The same streets, the same world, but it finally felt different. Not because it had changed, but because she had. She thought about Dolores' words, learn to shine without the flames. Now she understood. Sometimes light doesn't come from what burns. It comes from who survives it. Keisha turned back to Emma and smiled. Go on now, she said softly. The world's waiting for both of us. They walked toward the elevator together, hand in hand, peace in their steps. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.